Hey, this is Christian Buckley doing another MVP Buzz Chat, and I'm here with Erica. Erica, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Erica Toelle, a Office Apps and Services MVP from Seattle.
From Seattle, all the way from Seattle. And you're underselling yourself. We'll talk about like who you work for,
All right.
what you do in the community, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so I work for RecordPoint, which is an ISV focused on compliance. I'm their product evangelist. I also really love to participate in the SharePoint and Office 365 Saturdays, both as an organizer and a speaker, as well as any other fun projects that come along.
Now so Erica and I have known each other for many years. We were both, very involved with the user group there and the Puget Sound user group. What is it called now? It's been rebranded. It's moved locations.
I'm not sure.
Anyway.
Office 365 user group, I think.
But we also, so we were part of the team that put on the SharePoint Saturday events for 7 or 8 years together, as well as, and I actually took it out in the closet to wear it today, was the original Office 365 Saturday Redmond event, which was, what year was that? 2012?
I think so. It was the first ever Office 365 event.
And we had, I was thinking about that too, we had 385, is just the round number that I remember, attendees. And then I think we had another 40, 50 between speakers, sponsors, and things that were there, but or more than that. But I mean, it was a great event there at Microsoft campus. But so, Erica and I and Chris Beckett were the 3 primary people working with the user group, of course, to put together that event. But so you've just been awarded your MVP. How long ago? How long has it been?
I think officially 1 month.
Woo, boy, yeah. So you're part of the old guard now. So
yeah.
And so you're gonna get to see you there in the halls at the MVP Summit as well. So that's
officially this time instead of
well, I mean, you get to come to sessions.
E- role that I play at the summits.
Right. So that's pretty exciting. And so at events, if you're going out and you're talking about SharePoint and other related technologies, kind of where's your passion? What are you presenting on? What are you excited about now, the latest and greatest with Office 365, Microsoft 365 et al.?
Yeah, so I kind of think of it in 3 categories. So first and most dear to my heart, of course, is records management and compliance. It's something that typically might be seen as boring, but it's undergoing quite an interesting renaissance at the moment with the availability of Azure technologies and others. You just can go about it a bit of a different way. And it's also a topic that's really, really important for government and highly regulated organizations. Without thinking about the compliance aspect and the security aspect, the cloud isn't even an option for them. So I love educating about that and providing the information so that people can get to use the great technologies that are available in Office 365.
It's funny that you mentioned that too, and I just happened to be wearing my Azure t-shirt today, but because it was clean, it was on top. So, so it was easy. But this topic has come up quite a lot. In fact, I did an interview a couple days ago with not in the Microsoft ecosystem, but with a tech startup that's here locally in Utah. And the guys came from a consulting background and on the IT side and the fintech side of that. And they talked about how what really surprised them was how broadly adopted in the fintech space hybrid solutions are because of where they struggle with moving to pure cloud, although it's all accelerating. And so he was using all the kind of the wording, the phrasing that we've talked about extensively, and that we've done research on to show. I think even Microsoft was surprised by how slow organizations moved to 2-3 years ago to a pure cloud environment, that they went the hybrid route. Now hybrid is now the #1 implementation model of this technology.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to change. People are always going to have file shares. They're going to have SharePoint on-prem, SharePoint online, Office 365, maybe even non-Microsoft technologies like Box or Dropbox or Confluence or any of the other hundreds of tools they might need as a point solution for a certain problem. And I think that's what I mean when I say compliance and records management is undergoing revolution. You cannot count on there being one system where all the content is kept anymore. So you have to come up with some more creative and complex maybe solutions to cover all those different content sources.
But see that it never was all in one place.
I know, right? Well, I think the illusion has been shattered completely.
Yeah, right. Well, so that's one of those problems that, look, even if you were on entirely the Microsoft stack, that you had the difficulty of data being in one place or another, different older, new versions of SharePoint, because I think that I don't know what the stat is, but the versions of SharePoint running on average is like 2.5 versions.
Yeah.
So, the most organizations have more than one version. Well, a lot of those tools, if you've got SharePoint on-prem, whatever flavor it is, and online as part of Office 365 or standalone SKU, your dashboards, the reporting, the data that you can access to are different between those two environments. Now add in those wrinkles of having Box, Dropbox, other systems, other legacy applications and platforms, which were always there when those people were, anyway.
Yeah, so I think your choice becomes, do I build a system of record and compliance in each one of those places and maintain all those different systems? That's not actually practical. I mean, everyone's trying to do more with less, including having small teams of compliance officers. So it makes more sense to build one independent repository and then use things like Azure and other technologies that are now available to the masses without custom development to connect to the different systems and read them.
Yeah, right. I mean, look, you have a number of architectural options that are available. I think one thing that is happening is that that the ability to maintain those the data where it is in those legacy systems, applications, whatever it is, as long as it's accessible out to the web. If there's some way of doing
there's an API.
Right. If there's an API for that, then hey, you can access that. So you don't. I mean, that's why I say that hybrid is the new Palmolive moment. Like, you're already soaking in it. If you don't think you're doing hybrid, you are.
Yeah.
You have data that's sitting on servers that are sitting under somebody's desk that you rely on for your business, but then you also have all these cloud assets, and even organizations that say, nope, we are 100% on-prem. And then you just dig a little bit, peel back one or two layers, and you find out, no, you're relying on tools and systems that are 100% web-based throughout there, whether or not they are approved or not by corporate IT. That's a different topic, but
completely.
Yeah. So I mean, look, I don't know what the when you talk to people about that, and you talk about making that move and how to go and build that. I mean, I don't know what's the path for an organization that is split between a dozen different systems and tools, and wanting to get that under control. Like, how do you handle that conversation with the client?
Yeah, so I think you always start with their goals, and it's important to remember that you could design the most perfect system, but if no one uses it, then it doesn't matter. So then you take a kind of more user-first mentality. Okay, where are the users doing their daily work? Obviously, that's what works best for them in most cases. So are you really going to enforce some structure and governance on them, or are you just kind of let them do their thing and have a system that works with that? So those are kind of your two options. I prefer the latter. Like, end users generally don't care about records management. They're not records managers. You could train them to be it. It never works. So I would, The Azure tools to do this have only been around since mid 2016, so this is still pretty new, but you now have the capability to more just kind of watch and listen in and look at event receivers about what they're doing, and have the actual records management system be a separate thing that's more monitoring that, rather than something that's tied in with their daily work. And that's the approach I would recommend taking, since it's now possible to do.
Well, right, and it's I think you're and the first point is especially of going and making change. If you're it's going to be a process of understanding what the user, how they're using the technology today, how they collaborate, how they're capturing this and going through their work activities, and trying to shape the new system to kind of follow those patterns. Because if it's not a huge change, then they're more likely to adopt. If it's, you say, hey, we've got this new technology, but you're pretty much doing things the way that you've been doing them, in the past. But then that also then allows you to go in and introduce, improvements and start and slowly optimize those things. So I think you have to be thoughtful about that, what that looks like, and not just go and say, we've turned off the old system, here's the new one. It's completely different. Relearn to do your job. That method is just not effective. Never was. And now there's data that shows that it's not effective. So.
I mean, one of my other areas of passion from kind of a previous SharePoint life is end user adoption. And I think what people don't realize is that the emotional energy that it takes to make a change is a currency. Like, you only have so much of it and you can't make more. And so what organizations need to do is think very wisely about how they strategically are using that resource for their people and where they're applying it. And it can't just be throwing changes on people willy-nilly without thinking through, well, how much change have they experienced across all of these initiatives in the last 3 months, and do they really have any capacity left?
To add on to that as well, that's why it's also important to look at where it's being adopted, and where you start finding influencers within your organization, people that are grabbing the bull by the horns and like, hey, I'm excited about this, and then making sure you're supporting them. I mean, those are, both of us have background with project management, that side of things, and you always know, you go and you find those people that will become your closest advocates within the end user world, and the people that get excited about it, that catch the vision. Okay, I understand this is better, and they can become a mouthpiece for the rest of, for this implementation, and can help get through difficult decisions as well, where if you have to make trade-offs, if to do this so that we are compliant, we have to make this, add additional steps, make it harder to do your job in the new technology, but we're compliant. And they can then help kind of carry across the rest of the organization. But it's, anyway, to identify those people and support them is a key part of that adoption strategy as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. People always ask me, like, yes, I understand, this would be the perfect way to run a change project, but I have very few resources or budget. So, like, what can I do to get the biggest bang for my buck? And I always say it's two things. Number one, picking the right thing to do. So is it actually a good solution? Is it taking into consideration the fatigue we talked about earlier? And then number two is the Change Champion program, which I would include leaders in there as well, but right. Sometimes you manage that separately. But yeah, just actually getting people on board, educating them, evangelizing to them, giving them the right support and information.
And sometimes it's as easy as public recognition that they've done a great job, that they've really helped out, and call that out when you're doing updates, of the status of the implementation of, whatever that is. If it's in a newsletter, if it's sitting there in a meeting with a group, even if it's like a manager with her 5 to 7 direct reports, and just acknowledging, really want to thank, Susan for, her participation in this and the feedback on this. It was instrumental in helping us fix this process and move forward more quickly. But But I think everything we're talking about too kind of speaks to, I think the maturity of where we are as SharePoint people, SharePoint practitioners, and coming from that world, is that it is an iterative process. You can't boil the ocean and do it all at once, but you have to, pilot, try things out, learn from that, incorporate that in, and organically then go and grow that. If you move faster than your organization is able to, to handle, then you're going to lose people. And it's that, I think, was reflected. Even Microsoft, it took, a couple years extra for them to figure this out. But and I've talked about this, you and I have talked about this as well, but, like any, OEM, any software company, as big as Microsoft, especially, the data around it, it used to be that people selling SharePoint, selling Office 365 was their number one measurement was on, the number of licenses sold, how many enterprise agreements that are sold. But what happened is that Office 365 was out there live for a couple of years. Those enterprise agreements started expiring, and organizations said, we have like 10, 15%, 20% of people, like everybody's using email. Exchange online makes sense, but I don't see that we're utilizing anything else. We don't see that people are just not using it. And there was a shift there was like a 6 to 8 month shift where Microsoft said, end user adoption is important. And they made changes to the way that they measured the success of their software, and they've got that much stronger focus now, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's another great thing that came from the Yammer acquisition was those customer success managers and that mentality that you need people dedicated to adoption. And I think what you just spoke about is more like an art than a science. And for a product software company, I think that's a little harder transition to make to that mentality. I mean, there's a reason why we can't just have a install procedure for a new piece of software to get people to adopt it. It's going to depend on the culture, the people, the history, all these things that make it more of an art as to how to get people to actually use it. And I think it'll be really, really interesting to see what happens in a couple years, because frankly, right now we're still picking up the low-hanging fruit in regard to what people can adopt. I mean, Microsoft Teams, obvious win, that drives active usage across Skype, across SharePoint, OneDrive, and all these other things, Exchange. Well, what's going to happen when it gets a little bit harder and it's a little bit more saturated? I'll be very interested to watch.
Well, and there's, we've both been, around, been in tech, long enough to see a couple cycles and to see that it's where there's this kind of consolidation. Let's put everything on one system, one platform, to where now it goes back out in the cycle, I guess the cycle of best of breed. Let's do all these other different things. And then what'll happen again, I think there will be yet another kind of backlash, but the cycle comes back around where they say, okay, now we've let everybody go use the best of breed solutions wherever they are. Now we have a governance nightmare, we have compliance, we have security issues, we have like all of these other things. And so it'll come back around. And I agree that it'll be interesting to see. I mean, SharePoint is an infrastructure, component within Office 365, Microsoft 365. It's really a backbone to every workload within the Microsoft stack. Doing the air quotes here, but everybody, you know what I'm talking about. But,
sure.
Well, anyway, yeah, it's to see it go back and come back around with Teams, to your point, being like it's a cool interface for that. SharePoint is a component of that. Exchange, those two workloads are what are behind Teams, and with all the other integrations to see where it goes from there. I mean, it's always hard to predict on technology that doesn't exist yet what might change and be different, but certainly with all of the AI we're having to, for a lot of these cool features, you have to be at least hybrid, if not fully in the cloud, to be able to utilize and take advantage of those capabilities. I think that we're going to see more and more things that we're just not even thinking about looking at now that are all going to be about making it even easier to integrate with those other tools and systems, no matter where they are. And we'll almost have kind of a plug and play type experience. And the automation, the AI and cognitive services will fill in a lot of the gaps. So I'm excited to see a lot of that. We see some cool videos and there's the promise of those things, but reality for the enterprise is not quite there yet.
Yeah. I mean, I don't envy that challenge. Like, how do you build AI and machine learning models that apply to every organization in the world? Wow, that'll be interesting.
I think there's in fact, there was you've seen all these predictions about how all these jobs that'll be lost by with AI and kind of the new breed of these tech companies that are taking away the older jobs. And I've always long thought, it's like, yeah, the jobs today, a lot of them will go away because of this automation that's coming. But I envision, far more jobs being created from that space than are being taken away. I think that we will continue to be on a path where we have, a shortage of people, that there will be tech unemployment will remain incredibly tight, and it'll be an employees market for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge then becomes, the people that don't have jobs anymore due to AI are the new jobs that are opening up things they can do with minimal retraining or not. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's going to be a different world, but there's, as I tell my 4 now adult children, all 4 of them gone from the house, which is just weird. But no matter what field that they go into, that they need to be proficient within, the tech space, be aware of what's going on and how it relates to their field. It's funny, like my daughter, who's about to graduate in May from her master's in public health administration at the University of Minnesota, and I was chatting with her, this is like a year ago, but I said, are you aware of what's going on with blockchain, the infrastructure, the technology aspect, not the cryptocurrency side, but blockchain technology in healthcare? And she's like, what's blockchain? I'm like, never heard it. It's never brought up.
Yeah.
The next day, her professor's like, the topic was raised and they talked about it for weeks and went in some examples and about how that's changing. So I, the conversation and me making her go follow and look at a couple links actually had her, so she's like, thank you, Dad. I was able to say something intelligent in that class. So
awesome.
But yeah, it's again, it's changing the new technologies that are coming in. Whether it's augmented reality, I think has a stronger short-term, more near-term potential for the enterprise, certainly, than virtual reality. But AR, VR, AI, and machine learning, the cognitive services, the translation services. I mean, we are so close to having the Star Trek Universal Translator. Go. We're close.
That'll be cool.
Yeah. So Erica, I mean, so how can people, if they want to, reach out to you or follow you, and what are the best ways to reach you? Blog, website, social channels?
Yeah. Well, I spend a lot of time on Twitter. My handle is just my name, which I'm sure Christian will put in the show notes. I blog mostly at the RecordPoint blog. I'll send a link to Christian as well. Other than that, I'm pretty easy to find online. I'm always love having conversations around what people are trying to do with the technology. Like even this morning, I had an old friend call me up that just wanted to talk about calendars and SharePoint. Just reach out to me. I always have time to talk about it.
Yeah, very cool. So I always say that most of the people that we hang out with, that we associate with, other speakers certainly that are kind of on the speaker circuit and SharePoint Saturday world, all of us, like, don't be shy. We do this because we are we are networking people. We're people. Like we love having conversations about this. So bring your questions. If I don't
questions are always fine.
Yeah.
The expectation of free work is not fine.
Right. Well, that's the other half of that, is that if you don't respond right away, it's probably because you're busy. And if you come, I do the same thing. People come and they ask for everything. And I then have to say, hey, well, here's my rates. Here's what I do. Or I point them to the right person for that. But, anyway. Well, Erica, it was great talking to you as always. And where do I see you next? Are you doing any other events coming up soon?
SharePoint Saturday, San Diego, which you're not coming to.
Nope.
Branson,
Nope.
North American Collaboration Summit. Nope. Another great one if you're near Missouri.
Yeah, that is a great event, by the way. So I guess it'll be MVP
Summit.
Unless I'm driving, I was thinking about doing a road trip out to Seattle for a couple of days, but there's just too much going on. And now that Microsoft is a title sponsor of the Silicon Slopes Tech Summit happening at the end of January, it's like there's a ton going on leading up to that event. So
which I wish I could be at, but I already had a family vacation planned that exact weekend.
You're going to miss out on that fun little event with 20,000 of techies and business people here in Salt Lake City. So, but anyway, well, it's great talking to you, Erica, and catching up. And congrats again on your MVP.
Thank you so much, Christian, for having me, and we'll talk to you soon.